All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Happy Friday, especially after the Memorial Day week. Hopefully, this was a short week for you. My name's Chris McBride. I'm the manager of the Prevention Education Outreach Department of Domestic Violence Services in Snohomish County. And this is our Friday webinar, where most Fridays we hold a webinar either talking about a prevention aspect, an education aspect, or an outreach aspect of domestic violence services. Today, we are working on the outreach portion. So we're going to be joined by Joell Coltrane, the manager of our housing department at Domestic Violence Services. Domestic Violence Services offers numerous departments, but right now we have four major client service departments, the four being housing, Joell, shelter, legal, and community advocacy. Our outreach program on these webinars are going to discuss various ones at various times. This is a really good time if you've ever had any questions about how something works with domestic violence services, you want to know more about the community you're working with, or as I assume is the case with most of the people I see here today, you want to figure out how to help the clients that you work with. This is a really good opportunity to get some questions answered. This isn't the only opportunity, though. You can definitely reach out to myself, Chris at dvs-snoco.org, or our organization. We have a 24-hour support line at 425-252-2873 or 425-25-ABUSE. If you call that support line and want to get connected with somebody, you want some questions answered, we are always available, again, 24/7. So like I've mentioned, today we do have Joell Coltrane, our housing manager. Joell, I'm so excited to have you on today because, well, you're amazing and you've been doing this work for quite a while. But we also started as managers around the same time. So I feel like we're having a similar growth in our various departments. Yours seems to be more accelerated than mine because you're very good at what you do. So thank you so much for being here today. And I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about our housing program.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris, for the nice introduction. And thank you, everyone, for being here for our Friday webinars. We really appreciate your interest in our organization. And so I'm just going to kind of take you through the housing department, some of our staff, some of our intake procedures, and the client program. If you have any questions, please feel free to type those into the chat or raise your hand, and Chris can kind of stop me if I'm not noticing that there's a question. So we'll just kind of dive right into it. So basically with our housing program, there's sort of four key parts that I have outlined, and that's our community navigation, our shelter navigation, our permanent supportive housing, and our rapid rehousing programs. Currently, our community navigator, her name is Maggie Dutton. We also have a temporary full-time navigator. Her name is Cher Rasmussen. She'll be with us at least through the end of August, hopefully later, but at this time, we just have funding until the end of August. So our community navigators, their goal is to work with households in the community that are fleeing domestic violence. They will get referrals from 211, from coordinated entry, from our hotline, and also from the community. And that can range from other agencies, from police and emergency services, hospitals, CPS, there's quite a few agencies that we partner with. Some of the services that they can provide are assisting with relocation, helping a household to do a lease break, and they also can do prevention services. So homelessness prevention can look different depending on the household, but if a household is struggling to pay their rent because of domestic violence, we, in some cases, can help them with back rent or current rent to help them stabilize and remain in the unit that they're in. In some cases, if they're in a unit that is not safe for them, then we can also provide prevention services by helping them find a new unit so they don't become homeless. So we can help them with that, lease break, finding a new unit, and in some cases, helping them to stabilize with rent and deposit assistance. Our community navigators also do a lot of safety planning, working with households that are fleeing domestic violence that may still be in the relationship. Or in some cases, if a family would like to stay in the same unit, we can help them with changing locks, putting, window locks. We've helped with surveillance. We just work with the family or individual to help them safety plan and decide what is best for them and what we can assist with. So also in the navigation department, we have a shelter navigator. So she works with the housing program, but her main client caseload is shelter families or individuals, I call them households, that are residing in our shelter. Our shelter navigator's name is Mel Harana, and she does just like what it sounds like. She helps the shelter residents navigate housing. It can be very overwhelming when you're in shelter. You've just been, through a really tough time, and you need to find somewhere new to go. So she'll kind of help them to navigate different programs and find out what is going to be best for the people that we serve. Some of those services, again, can be safety planning. She can also help with gathering documentation if they need birth certificates and social security cards. She helps with that. She helps with housing applications. And in some cases, a household might need more time in a shelter. So, seeking other shelter resources, connecting families to other agencies. She also enters families into coordinated entry and the homeless management information system, which in some cases can help with finding the most vulnerable population housing assistance. We have.
I'm sorry, Joelle. I just wanted to hop in there real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's in these webinars, I've talked a couple times with everybody about how I used to work at the shelter. I don't make it a secret. In fact, I wear it a little badge of honor.
Proudly, yes.
Yeah, it's a great place to be. And the work that Mel does is so important, because when you're talking about like gathering documents, I mean, you mentioned yourself how hard it can be for survivors, but I think we can all just know that moving sucks in general. Moving is hard. Applying to places, getting all of those kind of documentation, much less adding the additional barriers that are set for survivors and the families of survivors that are coming into shelter. So Mel's job is so incredibly important. I mean, the work you guys do is
Oh,
incredibly
definitely.
important, but
Yes.
I just want to emphasize like this position, it is a tough position and it is handled with extreme care. And I think that that comes from the top down. And I really appreciate that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, thank you. And I mean, our entire staff is really um, client-centered, and, we wish that we could help everyone. But unfortunately, with funding being limited, we can't. Um, so, I didn't mention it, but there are tough parts in this job, or these jobs where, there may be families that, or households that we're not able to serve. But especially Mel, she does her best helping them to navigate, and is really a great advocate um, for the clients that we serve. So the next program is Pivotal Point, which is our permanent supportive housing program. It's a partnership with Everett Housing Authority, and we have a 20-unit apartment complex that has 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. So we can serve individuals or families. And currently we have a new staff, Kate Colley, who is just starting this week with the program. And like I said, that's a partnership with Everett Housing Authority. It is a project-based voucher program. So while households are in the unit, they have a project-based voucher. So they're just paying 30% of their income for rent. So if their income is 0, rent is 0. And it's really a wonderful way for the most vulnerable population to be able to stabilize. And then the hope is that we serve families in that program for a year to 18 months, and then they're able to graduate the program with a Section 8 voucher and go on to have subsidized housing as long as they need it in the community of their choice, utilizing a Section 8 voucher. Our Pivotal Point program does have a children's component. The staff at Pivotal Point is a family advocate. So she works with the adults and children in the program. The children's program mainly is during the school year. We have a campfire club that is, they gather weekly to meet and go through the campfire program. And then in the summer, we've had the opportunity to hire an assistant advocate that works with the children to do children's activities. It's a really, really fun, time in the summer. The advocate is able to take the kids on field trips. We do have some funding to be able to provide a week of an outdoor camp at Camp Colloqua with campfire for up to 10 children. And we also have a really wonderful holiday program. So children and parents are able to get gifts. And I was the case manager. I was the advocate for Pivotal Point for 4 years. So that's a program that is near and dear to my heart, and something that we've really been able to make a difference in the lives of a lot of families. Then we also have 4 rapid rehousing programs. Currently, we're in the process of hiring new staff for those programs. We have 3 open positions that we are working to fill. So if you know of anyone who's looking to get into housing case management, you can send them to our website. So currently, we just have our lead rapid rehousing case manager, Kathy Cooper, who's overseeing all of the programs. We have a HUD program that we're aiming to serve 6 families a month at a minimum. We have a HUD bonus program where we're hoping to serve 10 families a month. Consolidated homeless grant program where we are serving at least 5 families a month. And then a new program, which is our transitional to rapid rehousing program. Like I said, this is a new program to us. We have 2 transitional units in the community that we're able to use, which are kind of an extension of our shelter. We can offer them to households that are fleeing domestic violence, that may not be a fit for our shelter. Maybe they are fleeing domestic violence, but they're not in imminent danger.
Joelle, could I ask a couple questions?
Of course.
This isn't from the group. This is all from my my own personal education.
Yeah.
And anyone who's watching, my weakness in this field is housing. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions.
I know there's a lot of questions in the community about housing.
There really are. So when I was growing up, my family was on HUD type programs down in Oregon. And I remember one thing about being on those programs was there was a lot of structure, a lot of bureaucracy my family seemed to have to get through. Not just the paperwork and stuff, but like how many bedrooms we could have. We had 2 boys, 2 girls, and my mom. So it was like we always had to have at least a 3-bedroom. A 2-bedroom we were not eligible for because the makeup of gender and size. Do you guys have those kind of restrictions when you're working with people either in these rapid rehousing programs or at Pivotal Point, or both?
Yes, both. There definitely are restrictions. You know, for instance, a single individual, you know, they are only allowed to rent a 1-bedroom or a studio. And then with a family, it's the adult and then 2 children per, you know, per bedroom. I think it's a little bit different with Pivotal Point in that the, let's see, the children have to be in a, let's see, how do I say this? So if you have a family of 3, and so you have 1 adult, and then you might have 2 children, you could have a 16-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. At Pivotal Point, that would just qualify for a 2-bedroom unit.
Okay.
We can do some advocating for a family that may require, you know, in that case, they may require a 3-bedroom because of, you know, maybe one of the children has special needs. So, you know, we take each, you know, each family individually and, would advocate for them to the best of
Oh,
our ability.
so these
Um,
aren't our restrictions necessarily. These are the individual, like the government agencies we're working with.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
definitely,
gotcha. And then looks like
definitely.
we had a question in the
Mm.
Holly Hansen asks, who should I have DSHS clients contact if they are in HUD housing and want to move to DV?
So I would suggest that they reach out to, they can reach out to our hotline. Um, if the family is in imminent danger, they may be eligible for shelter services. Um, they, through the hotline, can also access a lot of other resources, be it legal or support group. They can also be referred to a community navigator. And I would also, suggest refer them to us for sure, but they can also work with their landlord to be able to uh, use the Violence Against Women Act to potentially relocate. All HUD housing should be aware of the VAWA regulations and be able to help them, break a lease. In some cases, if the landlord has another property, they can help them to relocate to that other property. But that's also something that we do, and it might not be in the client's best interest to have them try to do it, but kind of depending on their situation, if they're able. Does that answer your question, Holly? Oh, I forget. You probably can't hear. Okay, thank you.
I keep
So
interrupting you. I'm sorry.
no, Chris, you are fine. Go ahead.
Oh, I noticed you were trying to find your spots, and I'm like, oh, I keep pulling her off where she's looking. So no, you go ahead, and I'm excited
No.
to hear more.
So I was discussing our transitional rapid rehousing program. We have 2 units, our transitional units in the community. And then we also have, our goal is to serve 6 households with rapid rehousing with that program. So with the transitional units, the households don't pay rent while they're in those transitional units. So it's a good way for them to be able to kind of stabilize, gather documentation, similar to what would happen in our shelter. And then the goal is that within about a month, they move on to rapid rehousing. And then once in rapid rehousing, it's like a graduated subsidy program. So when residents first move into their rapid rehousing units, they don't pay rent. And then after 3 months, they are what we call recertified. So we take a look at their income after 3 months and determine how much rent they will pay. And the goal is for them to start off paying 30% of their income towards rent, and then it goes up until they're paying the full amount of rent. And again, that program is about a year to 18 months. For all of our programs, we are looking to work with families that have, of course, gone through domestic violence. But when we say domestic violence, we are talking about intimate partner violence. And we try to serve households that have had IPV in their background, within about a year. And the reason that we do that is because unfortunately there are so many families and individuals out there that have gone through domestic violence and intimate partner violence, that we really have to kind of narrow that search down to be able to serve as many people as we do.
Yeah, there's a breakdown that I like to mention occasionally, and I think it
Mhm.
really helps focus some of the work we do. So in the last full point in time count, which is the Snohomish County, and I'm sure most people on this call know this or this webinar know this, but the point in time count is a actual real-time count of individuals who are homeless at one night in Snohomish County. At the last one, 2019, that was pre-pandemic, there were about 1,200 individuals. Of those 1,200, about 40% or about 500 of them were women or children. Now, what we know about homelessness for women and children is that it's either, depending on the study you're looking at, it's either the main driver of homelessness for women and children is domestic violence, or at the least, it's about 50% of homeless women and children say that that's the main reason why they're homeless. So if we are quote unquote generous with that point in time count, we are talking about 250 individuals who are homeless on one night in, I think that was October was when that was done. Maybe it's November. I know it was rainy. I was soaked.
Yeah, it's January.
Oh, it's January. Okay,
Yeah,
well, it's rainy. It's the
it
Northwest.
is. Yeah, rainy and cold.
Yeah. So on that night in January, there are 250 individuals who are homeless, women and children who are homeless primarily, at least primarily because of domestic violence. That's 250, let's say it's five people per household, which we know is not the case. But if we assume it's 5 people per household that would be housed, that's 50 places to rent. Average rent in Everett, Washington is $1,500. Now, for a family of 5, you're not going to find a room or an apartment for $1,500 almost anywhere. So, but let's say $1,500, that's $65,000 a month times 12 for the year. We're talking about $750,000 a year. $750,000 a year at least to house this population. That's a lot of money. And that is, again, I was cutting that as short as I could on the numbers. And that's not funding that's available to programs like ours. So that's part of something to consider when we're talking about IPV, the year restriction, and the population that we are able to serve.
Yes, definitely. There is, a huge need in the community out there. And, like I said before, unfortunately, we're limited to funding and, cannot help everyone, but we certainly do our best. So our client programs, we, for all of our programs, follow a housing first model, which means just that we help the households we're working with find housing first. There's no stipulations as far as, substance use disorder or mental health or employment. We help them to find housing and then help them to address some of their barriers. We work with a lot of agencies in the community to help them address those barriers. So we make referrals to like our RAPS program in the county, which is Women and Men's Recovery and Prevention Services. We refer to mental health agencies. We have employment supportive programs that can help people to, get back into the workforce, children's programs, and all of our staff does safety planning ongoing with families because it's always changing. Once they get into a unit, it becomes paramount that they don't invite their abusers over. So maybe they have to work out exchanging children in, a neutral place or a police station, or, at a mall. I mean, somewhere, that is going to keep them safe. Especially our rapid rehousing programs are employment driven. So the goal is for those households to be able to stabilize and be able to take over paying rent at 100%, within a year to a year and a half. So a lot of our conversations with those family or with those clients is discussing employment. What kind of supports do they need? Giving referrals for working wardrobe or education referrals if they, maybe need to finish their high school, GED program or take a short employment certificate program. Each family, we do a housing stability plan. So that's basically what their goals are to become stabilized. And again, it's very individualized per each household that we're working with. It could be mental health or employment, like I said before, education. So we really want the clients to decide what it is that they want to do to become stabilized. And then we start exit planning, basically at least 6 months before a family will be exiting a program. Talk to them about what what an exit looks like, where they hope to be, if they are planning to get a Section 8 voucher, what community do they want to move to? Do they have any ways to build their credit so they can are more likely to be approved for an apartment? So there's a lot of discussion that starts early that goes into exit planning. And I think that's basically everything in a nutshell. I'll kind of open it up to questions. Does anyone have any questions? Chris, do you have any questions or input for me?
Well, while people are potentially gathering some of their own thoughts or potentially typing, let's see. Oh, yeah, we got one right away. So let's go to Holly and then I'll hop on. What were the 4 programs again?
So I discussed our community navigation program, our shelter navigation, pivotal point, which is our permanent supportive housing, and rapid rehousing.
So one thing that I was thinking about when you mentioned the relocation or the safety planning, the planning afterwards, one thing that I always appreciated about the way the housing department works is it's not just the safety side of things that you're having these conversations about, right? Tell you what, I'll finish my thought and then we'll get back to what Holly said here. But it's not just the safety planning portion. I noticed that you guys also take real care into looking at what are the schools like? what's the population like? Are you going to feel comfortable? Is this a place where you could see your kids having community and having real growth for them? Or is this just something that is far away from the person you're trying to flee? Uh, and I really always appreciated that about the housing department, that it's a more holistic approach than the immediate danger while still holding into account that immediate danger. Um,
Yes,
and oh,
definitely. With the advocates, we work with families and, really allow them, I mean, not necessarily allow them, but encourage them to, make those decisions for their children. So, um, like an example is we had a family that had their children in the I'm not exactly sure what school district it is right now, but it was in like the Bothell area. That is where their children were going to school. It was a good school. They had their friends. They, um, felt stable in those schools. And we worked with the McKinney-Vento liaisons to be able to keep them in those schools while they were in the housing program. And then really focused the housing search back to that area because that's where their support system was. That's where their kids were most comfortable, and they were able to um, find a unit in that area at the end of their program. um, so it really depends on the different households and what their needs are and their hopes for the future.
yeah.
So I see here, what were the 4 programs? So we have the HUD program. There's a HUD bonus program, um, consolidated homeless grant, and transitional housing, rapid rehousing.
And then it looks like, and Holly, please follow up if you need more information about any of those, and we'll see what we can do. And it looks like Juanita asked a question. How much of a barrier is the credit rating for the families you work with, and how might the family deal with that? Wondering how people are able to improve their credit quickly enough to exit the program within the time limits. That's a fantastic question and a very succinct question. Thank you, Juanita.
Yes, definitely. Again, it's very much tailored to the individual. One thing that we will try to do before they're housed, if possible, but sometimes it may need to wait until after they're housed, is to help them pull their credit report. So we use either annualcreditreport.com, which is a site you can get a free credit report, or creditkarma.com, where you can also get a free credit report. But you just have to make sure you don't click on, they have a lot of links for, get this credit card, to build your credit. You have to be able to, avoid clicking on those. But it is another way to get a free credit report, and it's not as difficult to get a free credit report on Credit Karma as it is with annualcreditreport.com. But a lot of times it's a goal for the family, and their housing stability plan is to improve their credit. So oftentimes we're not able to do much for that initial housing search. So maybe they have to stay for a year or a year and a half in a unit that, will accept them with a lower credit score. And then as a goal, they can work to, pay off some of those debts. In some cases, we've helped them to, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, goodness. Like when you have something on your credit report that, you didn't, oh, goodness. I can't think of the word.
So, oh, like when you get something removed from your credit report that's there
Yes.
erroneously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a word for that, which I
The-
can't think of right now.
if we
Dispute,
knew those kind of
dispute.
words, we wouldn't dispute. Yeah. If
Yes,
we knew words like
dispute.
dispute, we wouldn't be in nonprofit work.
I know. So yes, in some cases we can help them dispute that. Oftentimes we see that a survivor has debt to a landlord from a previous unit with their abuser. So, and they had to flee and they've racked up unpaid rent. And because of the abuse, there was damage to the unit. So, it can be a large amount. So we advocate for clients and write letters to landlords explaining the situation, encourage individuals to begin to make a payment plan. When they start working, they can use their tax returns, or now we have stimulus checks to be able to pay off some of those debts. So, it does, just like any of us that have had credit issues, it does take time. And sometimes you have to, maybe live in a unit that's, not as fancy or in as a, desirable area. But, if you can make those goals to improve your credit, it can definitely happen. So did I answer your question? Was it Juanita that asked that?
It was Juanita. Feel free to, yep, perfect. All right, so I'm gonna move those along. Yeah, and one thing that I always think about when working to try to find a survivor and their family a home or their next home is that we are always in, or like Snohomish County has been in a housing crisis now for a while before the pandemic. Rents were fairly high, and with the move to the suburbs that the pandemic has kind of created, I imagine that that's not going to lessen at all. So it is kind of a double-edged sword, with the housing department. You're working with individuals who have just been through really hard trauma and the realities of life in Snohomish County, which is it's sometimes hard for people who aren't going through these things to find housing. So
Definitely.
yeah, it's tough work, no doubt. Well, do we have any other questions out there? Anything else you wanted to toss on there, Joelle?
Um, you know, not that I can, not that I can think of. One thing that we are starting to look at is, what's going to happen when the eviction moratorium lifts. We are already having a housing crisis, and how are we going to be able to help people through, through that next step if they do become evicted? So, we're just gonna try as much as we can to get prepared to help as many as we can during that really difficult time.
Right. Also strikes me that there's been a lot of money pushed towards this particular issue over the last year that probably isn't sticking around for very long. I know the BOA is that correct? Am I thinking of the right place? They have rent
Yep.
assistance for
Mhm.
COVID right now. And I know that that can't last forever. That's just not how it generally works in America. So yeah, it's going to be interesting in the future, no doubt.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, one thing I can say is that nobody gets into this line of work, especially housing case management, if they're not trying their best to help somebody get to a better place. And um, thank you so much for what your department does. Thank you for being here today. Is
Thank
it
you,
okay if
Chris.
I give, is it okay if I give your email address?
Definitely. Yes.
All right. So everybody, I'm going to toss Joelle's email address into the chat. If you have any questions or want to follow up on something, you can definitely reach out to her. You can also reach out to me. A lot of you, I think, at this point have mine, but just in case, I'll toss it in there again. And yeah, this is the housing portion of domestic violence is an incredibly difficult topic. And it's difficult because everybody agrees that survivors, their families deserve home and safety. And the funding just isn't there to make that a reality in America. So there are alternatives that are found. There's, I forget, what's the program, Joelle? The discussion about alternative housing that's do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure.
I apologize. There's just a conversation that can occur where a lot of the conversations that some advocates have, especially the community navigator program and the shelter navigator program, those conversations are oftentimes what alternatives to housing are available. Is there a family member we can get you to? Do you have any reason that certain missions won't work? Um, so those are hard conversations for people to have, and this department has those daily. And so just kudos to you and your team for the hard work. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah, you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend.
You too.
And everybody else, you do the same. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much for being here. Next week, we're going to talk with Michelle and Gloria, our elder abuse advocates. It's a brand new department in DVS. We're going to talk a little bit about the work they do, about Elder Abuse Awareness Day, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is June 15th. We're going to have the conversation on the 11th, so you're all prepared when that day shows up. As always, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. So happy to have you here today. And I'm going to stop recording, but I'll stick around in case anybody wants to chat afterwards. Just let me know. Thank you again, Joelle. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.